Welcome back to Casa Frazetta, the House of Stories, with me, Tara.
And me, Kate.
In season 2, we take a deep dive into the magical world of workations.
And creativity.
And creativity.
Of course.
Absolutely.
In this next episode, we meet Jane Mackey, founder of Rora Dairy, a fantastic organic yogurt brand in Scotland. Little plug for Janie. And again, the golden threads of connection come through because Jane and I were at university together and great friends from the time we were 19. But in fact, she booked with absolutely no reference to me whatsoever. She'd listened to the podcast.
Wow, I did not know that.
Did you not?
I just assumed that you two had colluded.
Nope. And in fact, she said, I've booked, I'm on my way. And I said, fantastic, because actually, surprise, I'm going to be there at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was fabulous. And Jane is obviously a first-time visitor to the house and to Olhao. And I loved hearing her impressions of the town and the wonderful kind of environment that Olhao offers, but also just how she found the whole experience of workations, thinking originally it'd be much more structured, and how she really benefited from the creativity and all of the different people she could tap into while she was there.
Yeah, no, and she's a very special person. And in fact, I loved, and I'm such a geek, you know that.
Well, we both are, really.
Yeah, but I love listening about other people's businesses.
Yeah, you are a geek there.
And what I loved in particular was the notion of her cows learning to milk themselves with the aid of robots.
Yes,
so,
it's exciting.
Listen on.
Yes, indeed.
We're very excited to have Jane Mackey join us, particularly because Jane and Kate, I gather, and you might gather as we go along, we're at university together, so have been friends for a long time. But over the course of the last few days, when Jane has joined us for our third workation at Casa Frazetta, it transpired that actually we have crossed paths with each other, not once but twice. But the more important thing was that the first time was probably 35 odd years ago.
Scary. That is alarming.
It's alarming that we're starting to notch up decades. But it's, again, we talk about lots of different things at Casa Frazetta, but also these sort of golden threads of connection. And they may have started 35 years ago, but somehow or other, there's a little jingle on the thread, and those connections are still live. And
very special.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point. And in fact, I have to say this because we have been friends for a very long time. And one might think that I unduly influenced Jane to come to Casa Frazetta Workation. But in fact, you called me and said, I'd listen to the podcast. What's this place about? I think I might go. I've signed up. And that's how you've ended up coming, which is great. And then it just transpires that our time crossed over, which has been even more special.
Oh, God, I didn't actually even realise that.
Yeah.
You did it independently.
We absolutely did it independent. I said, this place sounds fascinating. Tell me more. Told me a little bit more. And then I was like, okay, I'm off.
I'm hooked. I'm signed up. I'm paying.
So let's unpick that a little bit. What got you hooked?
It was very interesting listening to the podcast, I will say, because Kate sent it to me independently, so it wasn't like I was following it. She said, and I said, I didn't even know anything about Casa Frazetta. You haven't discussed this. There's been lots going on in her life. That was an area that she hadn't shared.
Had a chance to talk
Hadn't spoken to me about, which is fine because I don't speak to her that often. We live miles away. However, it just sounded really interesting and varied, and I thought that is so out of my normal daily experience and comfort zone. Maybe historically it wasn't, but of recent years I've been too occupied to do things like that. So I thought, no, this is great. This is a really good, and because it's called a workation, it did mentally allow me to think I can go there and I can still work, and yet I can have fun too. And wouldn't that be great? And I'm always up for meeting new people. So that was one of its real key points. It was a total bonus when then Kate said, and you said, she's coming the same dates. I was like, yay! However, I was prepared to say, I'm not going to know anybody. Let's just see how this goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll come on to this in a little bit more detail, I suspect, but it also came at just the right time in terms of your work life, which we'll go on to, which was also, again, when you think about the universe coming together and timings and how things happen and so on, you said to me, it's just perfect. It's exactly the kind of thing I think I might need given the stuff I'm working through.
Feels like an opportune time. Jane where have you come from? Because you're right, it's not just round the corner, is it?
No. So I live in Aberdeenshire in the northeast of Scotland in a place called Peterhead, and I'm married to a farmer, Bruce, who's wonderful and very
Lovely.
supportive. And I run a yogurt business. I run a company called Rora Dairy where we process and make yogurt on the farm, and we sell it across the country to supermarkets and to independents, as well as farm shops and delis throughout the UK. The reason it's good to leave is it's very full on, it's very mentally occupying, not only because I'm running the business, but because we make product. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to feel you can step away and do both things. It will run without me, hopefully. It's always a worry, but
So far, so good.
So far, so good. And it's just good to give yourself, I think, the space to be looking at the next steps and how the business grows and how it operates. And I think, particularly in the current climate in the UK, this is a very key time to be looking at your business in an objective fashion about where it's going and how it's growing and what we can do to support it.
And I think one of the other things that's important for everybody to know is Jane is the founder. This wasn't a business that you've taken over and run. This is something that you set up with a lot of love and hard work and a good team and a very supportive husband as well, but equally...
That was an interesting discussion last night. So what are you? Well, are you the CEO? No, I'm founder, CEO, head of marketing, head of finance, chief bottle washer,
Yes.
the one who gets up in the middle of the night at 5 a.m. to go and check,
Is it still
kick
there?
the machines if they've got stuck. And yesterday we were having a good look at your new branding, which was very exciting.
So I think that's why it's nice to leave.
Yeah.
Because you do leave the production side behind and it will still run. And that's what's great, is having the faith that it will still work. And I think as the business has developed, that is where the confidence has come in, is saying, no, this bit's okay, this is good, we need to focus on the other bits better.
Yeah.
And every year, so we're 7, so we're not that young, but every year...
7 years old.
7 years old.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So every year I feel that there's another area that's developed more successfully to gently leave behind with someone else. So as it goes on, there's a sort of stepping stone. Other people have come in to do varying bits along the way, like marketing, but then it tends to pop back to me. But it's just an interesting stage of development of the company.
Very cool. And just out of curiosity, how does your working situation look like? What's the physical environment you're in, as say compared to Casa Fusetta during the workation?
Sorry. Let's just
big
put it
giggle
out there, incomparable. Our office it's a production site, so it's very white-walled and high hygiene. We're high risk, so everything is white-walled, built to purpose. So we have...
Factory.
It's a factory, basically. And we have an office on site, which is also white-walled, and there's no windows to the outside world. Yeah, so when you're in the office and production and the factory, you're not seeing daylight. So
You're focused on yogurt.
we're focused on yogurt. But we also start work early, so in the winter months in Scotland, it's very dark.
Yep.
So we often go in the dark and come out in the dark. And that's something that's really interesting for the team. I'm lucky because I live there. So I'm lucky because I have a farmhouse next door. So I have a home office too. So I do, especially in the winter months, try and make sure I have daylight.
Yeah.
Because it's...
On your commute.
On my commute.
On your commute.
Or
which
when
is...
I'm working from over, I step back into the house to work from home for a few hours. So it's easier because I'm not surrounded by a team.
So quite the contrast with...
Olhao is amazing because there's the light and the constant sunshine, and Casa Fusetta is just dreamy because it's got so much open space, and you've got the outside light coming in through every window on the outside, and the central courtyard means that you're never one step away from sunshine and light. So we've been very lucky. It may be a bit chilly. It's never going to be as chilly as the northeast of Scotland. So blissful, but you've got this wonderful blue sky. And I just find it's been really... Somebody said yesterday, I'm just lying here with... She had a vest on and her leggings. I'm just needing the vitamin D. Yeah. And I think that at this time of year, that's just gold.
No, that's why we like coming.
Yeah.
This is my perfect excuse for hosting workations, so that I can escape the sort of grey meh of there's no other way of London at this time of year. As you say, the temperature doesn't matter. It's just that blue sky that just goes, oh my God, it's so good for the soul when... What are we, 3 months into winter, and it's just like,
it's
when will it ever end? And here it's just gorgeous. But yeah, I'd love to know what your sort of first impressions of Olhao, because this is your first visit, but it will not be your last.
Surely not. I'm quite fascinated by Olhao. I think when I got here, we got here in the evening, so we came straight to the house. So we'll talk about the house in a minute. But
And
I
that was
think
in the dark.
and that was in
we
the
came from
dark.
the airport, yeah.
But the streets and the town are very special. It's got beautiful architecture. As we were wandering today, looking at all those tiles, it's all very varied. Different buildings are saying different things. All the streets not being straight and linear.
There are no straight lines.
Yeah, it's not like a New York
Yeah.
grid.
Yeah.
You're living, it's all a bit wondery and drifting. And when the first evening I said I'm off, I headed off. And I bravely on my own, and I didn't have a clue. And of course, Sarah said go left and right, and I went right and then left. So I wandered all the way to the wrong direction. She conveniently said there's a train track. So when I got there, I thought I'm in the wrong place. But it felt very reassuring and comfortable. There's no feeling of intimidation. It's just pretty, and everyone smiles. People say hello. It's a very welcoming environment. So having pottered around Olhao, getting a little lost, I arrived at the waterfront, which was stunning and full of people. That's what I wasn't really expecting. It was much more like being on holiday. There was lots of bars, cafes, vibe, atmosphere, people sitting in different places, lovely atmosphere of local families. There's really a lot of family feel. And so I sat down. Had a little cup of coffee and a cake, actually. I will admit that.
Oh, now she admits it.
Didn't bring any home for us, but never mind.
I see how it is. I see how it is.
Yeah.
And so enjoyed it. I just enjoyed it. And then actually, funnily enough, coming back, I didn't get lost. And I found myself straight back to this beautiful castle, which is really wonderfully welcoming when you walk in the door.
Oh, that's, yeah.
You feel like, oh, I've shut out all the novelty and I'm coming into a really lovely home.
That's really nice.
Good, because that was the intention.
Oh,
It worked. It worked. And I'm curious because obviously, like the first time Tara spoke to me about workation, it took me a minute. I was like, okay, what did that mean? What is that? Had you heard of a workation before? Was it something you had a sense of when you signed up, or was it?
No, but I think this is really interesting because I think what I thought it was and what other people might think it was is entirely different since we've got here. So I think it's really interesting because in my mind, it's a workation. You're going somewhere else to work. I envisage that's what everyone would be doing. Do you see what I mean? So
I
rather
think it very
than
much depends on the people. I know the individuals coming, not all of them. Some have said, I'm coming, but this is a vacation. And I have always said, it's a workation, but do not feel that working is obligatory. But some people will come and they go, no, I'm working 9 to 5, but I love the fact that I'm in a different environment with interesting people and there's some opportunities to do other things as well. Some people are doing some of the activities and then a little bit of work, and some people are not doing any work at all.
Yeah, and I now get that, and it's totally, but I think because it's called workation, I think in my mind I thought, gosh, everyone will be working, so that's a great excuse. I can go too because I'll still be working.
Did you feel like somebody was going to hold you like, okay, from 9 to 5 this is going to happen?
No, I didn't think that, but I did think, so I knew in my head, I was like, okay, great, I can work and not feel like I'm in anyone's way by working, and I won't be unduly distracted because I'm working, but also means if I want to stop and go and do something fun or go and explore, I can do that too, because obviously I'm in a different place, and therefore why go to a different place if you're not going to enjoy the place and get the stimulation from the other people. And that's been great. It's been really interesting. You never know when you first meet people what you're going to learn. Tara, you were talking about my packaging. In fact, we've got 2 designers and an artist. They've already given me their opinions, and that's just very valuable. It's always valuable, as well as obviously the lovely you two who've given me opinions too. But it's great to have that outside perspective because you don't get it when you work for yourself or with your home team as much.
Or people are trying perhaps to please you, or people have their vested interests or their own agendas or the internal politics, or you're all too close to it.
Yeah,
and
I think that's really true.
And what I've always loved and what I love today, for example, is that, again, we have a relatively broad spread of ages. We've got the daughters of some ladies who've come to join for just a few days of their mother's workations. So we've got young women in their mid-20s, and then we've got Haruka and Julian who are probably in their mid to
30s,
late
30s.
mid 30s, and then we've got us, and
No,
we
mid
won't
30. No.
Yeah,
but then we also
stuck at 21.
50s.
And then we also have some slightly even older guests, and from different countries, from different perspectives, from different life experiences.
And that is
That's
such a
the
rich
human-
tapestry. That is the lovely thing about, as you were saying earlier, touch points of different people. The thread of, because
Yeah.
they're all somehow clocked into Casa Fizetta without knowing everybody else.
But that's
And
what's so funny is
benefiting.
that we'll
Yeah.
probably find out at some point. So it's just, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's always some interesting kind of connection, much like you said in the beginning of this, that you've met in some capacity before, or somehow you've touched lives in different ways or similar experiences. There always feels like there's a real connection.
Living in different countries, even Julian and Haruka living in New York.
Yes,
I used to
same.
live in New York. There's different times and lives where people have done different things.
Yeah.
So that and that is really valuable. On the work bit, is having those fresh perspectives. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I might make yogurt on a farm, but I'm still getting a lot of value from their different behaviours.
And do you feel like stepping back a little bit and being out of the white room of the workshop or the factory has helped you see the business a little bit differently or think about it differently?
We've been here a couple of days, so we've got another 4. So I ask me at the end. I feel like there's more.
Unwinding?
Unwinding was distracting being in a new place. So you're distracted by the excitement of it.
Yes, and
You know,
we have been quite naughty about stealing you away. It's
Yeah.
been the weekend, so it's
the weekend's
we've
good.
had
So
we've
I've had
the
one day
excuse,
of
yes.
of my real workation, as in the work bit, and I've had 2
Monday's
lovely
coming,
days of
sister.
vacation. I've had vacation bit in space, but all that, none of it is not unhealthy and wonderful. It's all healthy because you get extra sleep,
Vitamin D.
you party a bit more, you hang out with your friends. What's not to like?
It's definitely not. We're not abstemious here. I think it would be
No.
fair to say. Yeah.
And the other thing I will just point out is the food, the quality of the food in Olhao. I heard
Yeah.
it's just coming from Peterhead, where we have the best seafood shipped in from all over the country. Here they're cooking it beautifully, as well as having that best seafood.
Yeah,
so
but
the
also
restaurants are
yes.
amazing.
Yeah, and yesterday we were in the fish market,
Yes.
and the fact that it was there and people were buying it, and also we even will include it in the show notes so that you can see that. One of the things, because I'm such a geek, one of the things I particularly love is that all the vendors have, for every fish that they sell, there's a provenance card. So how it was caught, where it was caught, and the type of catch. So is it a trawler catch or is it a line catch? Or is it farmed, or what is it? Because
True transparency.
absolute transparency.
But in the world of sustainability on fish, which everyone is getting more and more passionate about, this is really key. And I imagine the big fish markets, they probably do that too, but over a tannoy. But as a consumer, we're not seeing it everywhere we go. And that is, it was so lovely to see that, because we talk a lot about it, especially in the food world. Where did your food come from? Do you support local? Is it sustainable? And that's something that was very much the background of how we set up our Aurora Dairy business, was to really push forward those aspects. But it's not across the board, and people talk about it being important, but are they supporting it? And here what's lovely to see is they obviously are joining the dots between the commercial producers and the consumer. The consumer is caring enough for them to put those labels and read them, or they wouldn't still be there.
Yeah, and also just to show it's mindset and attitude and simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
And
As
it's
long
not
as
all
I
a positive story. It wasn't all
No,
being
no.
line caught. Some of it
Oh,
from
no,
the
no,
North
it definitely
Atlantic,
was.
shipped
And
in
transported
from
in.
somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they tell you, which I just think is fabulous.
I know, because actually I've been there before sometimes and thinking, oh, that fish looks beautiful, I'm going to buy that. And then it took me a few years, I'll admit, to suddenly realising what these cards were. And then I suddenly looked and I went, hang on a minute, that's from a fish farm in Spain. No, I'm not going to buy that.
Whereas your lovely clams were just picked off by the people locally.
Yeah, you can actually
You
watch
see
them.
Today we saw.
Yeah,
actually.
because we went out at low tide and the clams get picked or foraged from the mud flats opposite the market.
Which is great. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, one of the things we were looking at in your packaging, you have very few ingredients in your yogurt, correct?
Yes.
That's a key part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
And do
absolutely.
you show that information?
That's why we were looking at packaging. And it's on the back of pack because it's an ingredient list, but it's not as obvious to the consumer if they're just looking at front of pack. So we're changing the packaging to be able to see that more clearly, because I think that we're all talking about ultra processed foods and trying to have the less of it and where's your food coming from. So I think that was very much the ethos of why we started processing dairy products, but very important to me that we have absolutely no additives and no unnecessary ingredients. It's literally made up with milk, local fruit, and a little bit of sugar, and of course live culture. But I think that people do not realise that. So often across the entire, when you go to a supermarket, what you're buying is in food is that really organic? Is it not organic? And unless it's labelled organic, it's not organic. And I think the whole sustainability thing is actually creating a little bit of controversy because you can't prove it's sustainable.
It can be really confusing.
Yeah.
Can't it? There's lots of stuff. And I think that's one of the key things about the labelling that's so helpful because as a consumer, not in the business, I don't know what I'm looking at unless I get the information presented to me, and it needs to be, as you say, on the front, upfront dummy, here's what you're buying.
Yeah, and that's what was amazing to see here in the fish market.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. But I think, if I may, founder of yogurt business, it's not your only gig, is it? You've got another hustle going on.
Yeah. Do you think I can learn from Tara on Casa Frazetta? I'm not so sure. I have 2 holiday cottages, which I think is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Which I really embarrassingly don't promote much, and certainly don't promote on our social media. We were always very lucky to have a lot of contractors come and stay, and there's always a lot of work going on near Peterhead between renewables, energy. There's the whole gas plant that ships in for the UK. Everything's very local to us. Not always that pretty, but very local. But we've got very beautiful beaches. We're beginning to get more tourism. They're really working on it in Aberdeenshire because there's some lovely, obviously you've got Deeside and you've got Balmoral and you've got Braemar. So you've got a lot of the very she side of it, but we're probably more the beachfront industrial side of it, but beautiful beaches.
Not where your cottages are.
No,
they're
we're on the farm.
So you could actually see Royal Dairy in action, could you?
Yeah, you could. You can come. We do a lot of farm tours, a lot of school visits, a lot of visits, full stop, actually, of people wanting to really... We're robotics, so that's quite exciting if you're in the world of dairy.
And I have to say, having seen it in action, it's pretty cool. And it's definitely it's like modern farming with heart. I thought it was really good to see myself.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I wasn't always married to a farmer, and I think you don't really realise what other farms look like. You only really know what you learn on your own. And the robots and people coming to visit them is definitely a learning for people. Cows normally get milked twice a day. With the robots, they milk themselves and they milk 3 times a day. Funny things like that.
They can come and go, can't
and
they?
they can come and go.
And
they can go.
Open.
So they choose...
They choose when they get milked.
How interesting.
Absolutely.
I had no idea.
It's really fascinating.
I'm feeling a trip up to Aberdeen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could invite
So you have a
myself.
website, which is also, it's interesting to see online. You can
Online.
see- yeah.
And I think
But-
you can also, the cows go in and out as they want in the summer because they can only go out once they've been milked. So it's very clever. It's all done by collars. So when they're like, I want to go outside, you haven't actually been milked for a few hours. You've got to go be milked first.
Because it can
Before you can go out, because otherwise if it's
But
gone
they
too
learn
far,
that.
they learn that. They're clever animals. They're very herd, so they do everything together.
Right.
But no, really interesting. So the cottages, if you stay in our cottages, you can come and have a little tour. And then we obviously make yogurt, so we'll give you yogurt too.
And it's delicious yogurt, I can say
they're
that.
just cute 3-bedroom farm cottages. So not nearly as beautiful as Casa Frazetta, but a little bit more humble and rural than the
great
beautiful.
nice.
People really enjoy popping up there from Edinburgh, Glasgow, especially with young children. There's a lot of running around. But you always take tips, going back to Tara's hospitality chat. No matter... I don't know about you, but wherever you go stay, if you're staying somewhere that's an Airbnb or it's a beautiful house, you always have something going, actually, I could do that without
exactly,
too much
Yeah, that's a good
challenge. Whether it's where you put your coffee pods or you've got those beautiful baskets in the bathrooms. And I was thinking, rather than just leaving a pile of face cloths, why not have a little beautiful basket too? These little nuances of how other people do things beautifully, I always think is a wonderful learning.
Yes, we were having a little chat earlier about whether we should gather other property owners for a session together and share top tips.
And some of the challenges,
And
that's
some
the
of-
great
yes,
thing.
yes.
Like when I think
It's not all easy.
it's interesting. Much like the workation, you're able to reach out to different audiences and see how things get done, or whether it's an exposure that gives you an idea, or whether it's a problem you're trying to solve and you get more heads on it than just your own. I think these kind of group settings where people are open and they're sharing and there's an opportunity to do that, it's so important and really helpful.
But it's even interesting watching you, Tara, operate on so you send out welcome letters, you tell people what's gonna happen. You've got a website that also communicates to you. You can look it up, and not that I'm very good at that kind of thing, but I pretty much figure out when I get there, I'll sort it out. You've sent out wonderful programs. Everyone knows what they're doing every day. And yet still, I've been watching them all day long. You are being asked questions of you. You're very much a hospitality leader. When you're here, you're still having to never, ever take your eye off the ball, even though you've set up an environment for people to be almost free and do their work and go out to restaurants. They're meant to be independent, but you still have to be very available and present. And I think people don't realise that. I don't think when they think they're going to set up a business of an Airbnb or a hosting guests, that you were there to be answerable, basically, in positive way.
Totally positive
all
ways,
positive, but you've got to be willing to do that.
Yeah,
I always say you've got to like customers.
Eyes open. Yes, and you need to know where your strengths are. Mm-hmm. and what your tolerance levels are, and or how to create boundaries and what you will do and what you won't do, and try to be clear with yourself and or others about what those boundaries may or may not be.
Probably quite good points for life, actually. I think people would spend years in therapy trying to get to that point. Myself included, I'm sure. But yeah, I think everybody needs a guide in some way, don't you? Whether it's independent. One of the things I love about Casa Fusetta when I've stayed and I've seen and I've watched with other people is that you are able to just, and that's why the workation works well, you really under your own steam, but you've got all the support of the house team, your guidance, Tara, when it's needed. If I'm not sure I am in Olhao or what I want to do, I've got that support. And even down to just being able to go get a cup of coffee. I don't have to get up and figure out how to buy the coffee and where to get it. It's there for me, but I can go and help myself when I need to. And I really like that. I think that's a very welcoming part of being here, and it makes you feel incredibly relaxed.
I think one of the things that always appealed to me and that I think works is that because we're in a town,
yes,
and we don't have keys, so we have security codes, which obviously we change on a regular basis. People can come and go, and so they have that independence. And sometimes it's just the psychology of the independence to know if I, for whatever reason, I need a little bit of space on my own, I'm walking out and I can do everything on foot.
Yes.
Obviously, tomorrow, for example, we're going off to visit olive groves, and the next days we're going to go off and visit art galleries and vineyards in another part of the Algarve. And for that, you need transport. But there's a huge amount to explore.
So much on the doorstep.
Literally on your doorstep,
you could stay
on
here.
foot.
You could stay here and go nowhere and just potter around, and you'd probably be as happy as Larry.
Or a clam. Happy as a clam.
But it is, and I always say that, the town is Marmite. Oh, you love it or you hate it. And there's no... I'm delighted to know that you're part of our Marmite clan that loves it. But it isn't...
There is a little bit of gritty because it's not all perfect.
Yeah,
no,
and
exactly.
Maybe that's why people might not love it. If you're used to the perfect kind of resorts like Portofino, you might find it's got a little bit more of a gritty edge. But you can see that, I hate to say it, maybe in 10, 20 years' time, it's not going to have much grit because it's all it's going to be as beautiful as all those little Italian coastal towns because everyone seems to be loving it. Coming here, so the property is unbelievable.
Book early is what you're saying. It's really interesting you say that because that's been a discussion, a thread, if you will, another thread throughout a number of the conversations for the podcast. For example, yesterday with Stefan, we were talking about trying to preserve the magic of being here so that it develops, but it develops thoughtfully. And I think that was a really nice thing to hear from the community. That's the case, not just perfect.
But even the things that we were saying today, walking along the shorefront, which I thought was amazing, is how much detail that the community's put into it. So, the little pictures of the fish that I noticed in the wrought ironwork underneath the trees.
Yes. And then Tara pointed out
totally blew my mind because we don't get that in the UK very often. You don't see that level of detail.
Public art investment.
Little bits of, this is not a huge town. The fact that somebody's taken the time to consider and see the benefit, the bins, which look like a sardine.
Yeah.
Tailless.
Yeah.
And clever. I think
Yes.
that, and playful, which is, I think, part of, I don't know, that's sort of a good analogy for the town, I think.
Cool.
You know?
That feels like a perfect place to say
Thank
you,
you.
Jane.
Thank
and I
you,
hope
Jamie.
you enjoy the rest of your workation.
And
Thank you very much.
Maybe
for
get some
having
work
us.
in.
Yes.
Yeah. Hope I can try and slot that in
Yeah.
a little bit.
And we'll look forward to hearing more on Royal Dairy at another time.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you.
In our show notes, we've added some really useful links. One to where you can join the waiting list for next February's workation. And please note, waiting list. Tara's been busy. But do add your name if you're interested. You never know what happens and space may become available. Also, we find out more in the show notes about Jane's yogurt business, Aurora Dairy, and the farm cottages.
In our next few episodes, we wanted to give you a greater sense of the energy within the house. And for that, we're sharing a sound bath and guided meditation recorded on the night of the full moon during our February workation. And we have separate interviews with Sana and Johnny, who led the sound bath. They share their remarkable stories into the world of yoga and sound, and I can guarantee they are not what you expect.
As ever, we would absolutely love to hear what you think of the series. You can find a dedicated email in the show notes where you can send us any questions because we'd be delighted to answer and love to hear your thoughts. And last but not least, we would be really grateful if you would subscribe to the series and help spread the word about Casa Fusetta and this podcast, sharing it with your family and friends. So it remains to say, Ate a proxima!